Hey there, so I'm Lauren Morlino. I am an Emerging Technologies and Services Manager at Efficacy, Vermont, and this training is about grow lights. We've gotten more and more questions over the years about grow lights, and they're a very technical and confusing topic, so I'm really excited to share what I've learned after researching them for the last 2 or 3 years. Here we go. At Efficiency Vermont and across the industry, we call this Market Controlled Environment Agriculture, or CEA. You'll also sometimes hear it called indoor agriculture. I'll talk about the background on why we're seeing increases in this market and also customer types and programs in this presentation. I'll also go into technical specifications of the grow lights themselves. So, to give you some background on the market, cannabis legalization is a really big reason why this is taking off right now. Across the U.S., recreational and medical cannabis has become more popular, and in Vermont, we've seen hemp become really popular after the passing of the 2018 Farm Bill. Customers in Vermont can grow residentially for medical or recreational use, and commercial cannabis growing has been talked about in the legislature the last couple of years. In terms of food security, this is a really important one, especially now in times of COVID. Lots more people are trying to grow their food from home in an effort to avoid going to the grocery store or having to rely on other sources. And our exponential population growth shows that we really need to invest in more sustainable and more productive ways of feeding the world. Our farmers need to produce more food in the next 4 decades than they have in the last 8,000 years. The farm-to-table movement is also really important to Vermont's culture. Vermonters like to eat local, sustainable food all year round, and so that means that there are a lot of local farmers that grow indoors, whether in greenhouses or even in some cases in basements, to grow microgreens, fruits, vegetables all year round, regardless of what's happening in our climate outside. The transition of Vermont farms is also really important to note. We see a lot of older dairy farms switching to do hemp. They have a lot of area, they have a lot of expertise in growing, the farmers do, that is, and they have a lot of outbuildings like old barns that can be used for drying, growing, hanging, storage. So we see a lot of Vermont farmers very smoothly move into the hemp or CEA business. Climate resilience is another important portion. We hear from farmers all the time that they cannot predict the winters like they used to. They have really wet summers or really drought-ridden summers. So the ability to control your environment, again, whether in a greenhouse or an indoor grow, does reduce risk in terms of the productivity of your crop, and in some cases just the ability to have a crop. We've heard from farmers that they now, because of climate change, can't predict frosts in May, for instance. So they'll get a frost in May and lose their entire crop that would have grown throughout the summer. Utility needs is another big thing. So a lot of these customers are on propane and oil. The electric utilities are interested in switching them to electric where possible, and building sustainable load. As an energy efficiency utility, we're interested in reducing the wattage associated with, in particular, high pressure sodium lights, and hopefully reducing them to more of an LED wattage, again, for overall grid health. We're also interested in understanding when these lights go on and off, and whether we can control them in a way that is the healthiest for the grid and allows us to flex that load to be the most lucrative for Vermont ratepayers. We also are interested in this market because grow lights are often purchased by low income and rental communities. And as Efficiency Vermont, those are two areas that are more difficult for our programs to reach. So we're excited about the opportunity to work with those customers as well. Finally, just on the utility needs piece, back to savings. The savings is really good from high pressure sodium to LED or even fluorescent to LED in some cases because the run hours are long on these products. So it's important to note that this is a really exciting market for us and one that we're interested in supporting for a while. In terms of customer types, there are kind of three commercial customer types that we see. Indoor grows where you have sole source lighting, no outside light whatsoever. You also have in those spaces irrigation, HVAC, sometimes CO2 being pumped in, lots of different systems happening in the indoor grows, and those tend to use the most amount of energy that comes mostly from the cooling and the lights running a lot of the time. We also see greenhouses use the grow lights, mostly year-round greenhouses, but more and more we're seeing season extension greenhouses use grow lights. And year-round greenhouses operate very similarly to indoor grows in that they have a lot of different systems running all at once and all year round, but they are often heating the spaces rather than cooling the spaces like indoor grows. And then the hemp customers have also been starting to use the lights. A lot of them use lights to start the babies inside greenhouses or inside of a basement, for instance, and then they move the product usually outside and grow the hemp outside for the summer and then bring it back inside to do drying and processing. But more and more we're seeing hemp customers talk about moving their entire grow inside. So that would move to more of an indoor grow scenario that's typically only outside of Vermont in kind of the recreational THC cannabis type markets, but they're becoming more and more popular for non-THC hemp markets in Vermont. And we are seeing a subsect of folks start up indoor grows kind of in anticipation of the legalization commercially in Vermont. And then finally, residentially, we see indoor growing of all types, produce, seed starts, cannabis, and we're interested in helping any. So in April 2019, we came out with a residential indoor growing guide to supplement the residential grow light rebate. And you can contact us for copies of this residential indoor grow guide. It comes in PDF form. This is what the rebate page looks like for these LEDs for indoor growing. It can be found under the residential rebates section. It's $100 off per fixture. Please look at the qualified products list. There's a lot of products out in the market and there are very few on this list. We really only want to be rebating the cream of the crop. We also have dehumidifier rebates. Those are very popular with the indoor growing group as well. And just wanted to note that we also have commercial rebates for these LED grow lights, but customers need to call for those incentives, and they will still likely be $100 per fixture or more if they qualify through the qualified products list. If something doesn't qualify and you're interested in understanding why or whether it qualifies, please call us. We're interested in understanding what you're seeing for products, and we can evaluate them on a custom basis to see if they meet our qualifications. This is what the online rebate form looks like for residential customers. We do ask a couple of high-level questions. We don't ask customers what they're growing in case your customers are concerned about their privacy. And it's pretty straightforward and can be found online. This slide demonstrates how much savings we're claiming as part of this program and how much savings customers can expect from switching to LED. So these left-hand blue columns show you what the incumbent technology would be, and the columns that include green on the right include the lighting and the cooling savings. LEDs run cooler than high pressure sodium and fluorescent in a lot of cases. So there is fan power or cooling savings associated with moving to LED. This slide corresponds with the one before it. It shows the categories of savings that we claim based on baseline, which is on the left, to new LED wattage on the right. I mentioned greenhouses a little bit before, but I wanted to call out a guide to energy savings for greenhouses that we launched in January. And with this guide, we also launched rebates for thermal curtains, coverings like polyethylene or polycarbonate, heating systems, LED grow lights, greenhouse controllers, ventilation, motors, and VFDs for pumps. All of these rebates are custom, so greenhouse customers should call us, and we can also help them get rebates from the electric utilities listed here. Greenhouses are rapidly increasing, about 20% year over year across the US, and 10% lit space year over year across the US. In Vermont, I would venture to guess that it's probably increasing even quicker than that. A quick plug for our custom rebates for drying and processing as well. We got a lot of calls from customers who wanted to know how to dry hemp, for example, more efficiently, or if we had rebates for chillers for hemp processing, for example. Please call us if you know of customers who are interested in receiving rebates for this equipment. These two resources are extremely helpful for indoor growing. They're put out by the Resource Innovation Institute. We also have rebates for indoor grows, so call us for those rebates and custom analysis. Now I'll jump into the technical horticultural lighting portion of the presentation, but first I wanted to mention some disclaimers and high-level tips for evaluating these products. First, many of the new terms I'm about to show you are complicated and do not apply to human-centric lighting. So I want to acknowledge that this is new and complex information. There are also a lot of myths and misconceptions out there about plant needs, spectrum, and power. So please be wary of what you read, especially online. Power does not equal performance, so just like anything else, these lights have an efficacy. I hear from growers a lot, well, I don't think LED can provide the right amount of power for my plants to be productive. And it's actually not about power, because the same LED who uses 650 watts could give you the same amount of photons that a 1,000-watt high-pressure sodium could give you. The industry is moving heavily towards LED and will probably be almost all LED in 10 years due to energy codes and also advancing technology. So people who aren't switching now are just kind of putting off the inevitable in a lot of cases. Plants are pickier than humans. Light is their food, so it's very important to get it right. Be wary of snake oil salesmen, especially in this industry. There are some common terms like full spectrum that actually mean something, but are often misconceived or misused, and it leads to a lot of confusion among growers. Please note that the rest of this presentation is pretty dense information, and you should feel free to keep this presentation or the Resource Innovation Institute guides handy for your regular reference. So jumping right in, PAR stands for photosynthetically active radiation. The simple definition is the light that plants use for photosynthesis, and its unit is nanometers. PAR itself is not a unit, but rather a range of from 400 to 700 nanometers. Other light outside of this range, like UV and far red, is conducive for other photobiological activity, but PAR is primarily responsible for plant growth and yield. A mole is a way to describe a quantity of light. It gives us a way to describe light as finite quantities of photons. A photon is a bundle of electromagnetic energy and is the basic unit used to describe light. 1 million micromoles equals 1 mole. A mole is a unit of measurement to measure photons. PPF is photosynthetic photon flux. The simple definition is the rate of light produced, and the unit is micromoles per second. Photosynthetic photon flux, or PPF, is the total amount of light within the PAR range that a fixture produces every second. PPF is not the amount of light your plants will receive in your facility. PPF is the amount of light your fixtures can produce between 400 and 700 nanometers. This does not mean it's the amount of light your fixtures will produce, nor the amount of light that will actually reach the crop canopy. You may have been thinking to yourself in the last slide that lumens and PPF are similar, and they are, except lumens are for humans, which means that lumens measure the response for humans, whereas PPF measures the light response for plants. You shouldn't look at the lumen output for horticultural lights because it doesn't matter to the plants. You'll want to look for PPF numbers. PPFD stands for photosynthetic photon flux density. The simple definition is the light received by your plants. The unit is micromoles per square meter per second. PPFD is the amount of light, or the number of photons measured in micromoles, within the PAR range that hits a given area of the plant canopy every second. PPFD measures the light your plants actually receive at the canopy in your facility. Fixture arrangement, fixture type, and mounting height of your fixture all affect PPFD measurements in the field. Average PPFD should be used to inform facility design. You should take PPFD measurements with a meter across the canopy at a consistent height. If you don't have a PAR meter, you can contact us. We have a couple that we can loan you. This is what a facility might look like. The canopy is the green, and the smaller boxes are lights. One tricky thing about grow lights is that they're not usually a one-for-one replacement. This picture shows a uniform density across a plant canopy in a grow facility. In this case, you want to match uniform PPFD measurements, which may require you to use more or less LEDs than you had baseline technology, usually high pressure sodium. PPFD measurements at recommended mounting heights should be provided by lighting manufacturers so growers know what their plants could receive in similar conditions. The graphic shows micromoles received as modeled at evenly spaced locations across the plant canopy area. Please note that the rainbow colors on this map has nothing to do with the spectrum of light hitting the canopy, but rather the density of photons. Photosynthetic photon efficacy is an important metric for the productivity of your plants, and of course at Efficiency Vermont, this is one we care about greatly. The simple definition is a fixture's capability to produce light, and the unit is micromoles per joule, which is the same as micromoles per second per watt. Efficacy is defined as a light fixture's ability to convert power from electric energy, or watts, and deliver photosynthetic photon flux, or PPF, to your plants. LEDs have been increasing in PPE over time, and that's one of the reasons why we're really excited about this technology. Regarding rebates, a fixture must have a PPE of 1.85 micromoles per joule or higher to meet the EVT rebates list or the DLC list. Many utilities qualify products with a PPE at or above 2.0 micromoles per joule for financial incentives. For reference, a typical double-ended 1,000-watt high-pressure sodium fixture has a PPE of 1.7 micromoles per joule. PPEs have increased rapidly in the last year since the DLC list came out, and so I think that LED PPEs will leave other technologies in the dust. DLI is an important characteristic to know, especially for greenhouse growers who are trying to meet a certain amount of sun per day. DLI stands for Daily Light Integral. The simple definition is the light received by your plants from the sun in a day, and the unit is moles per meter squared per day. DLI is the sum of total moles of photons per meter squared per day. For more information on DLI, including specific plant needs, you can click on the link below that will take you to a Purdue Ag Extension page. These are DLI maps of the United States, and as you can see, Vermont is very low light in January, December, November, our winter months. We lose about 90% of our light from June and July to December and January comparatively in Vermont. This is just information on how to calculate DLI for your reference. Spectrum is not a new concept, but it's really important when we're talking about the reactivity of plants to certain lights. You can see on this graph that certain chemicals in the plant react to certain wavelengths. And so it's really important to understand how your plant is reacting to the light and making sure that you're supplementing it with enough photons in each wavelength that it needs. As a reminder, white is the combination of all colors between 400 and 700 nanometers. If you or your customer is looking for a full spectrum light that can support plant needs across multiple different plants and also multiple different stages of growth, whether it be clone, veg, flowering, full spectrum is probably what you're looking for. There's a lot of people out there that say that that their products are full spectrum, and in a lot of cases that's not true. Ask for a spectral diagram when you're talking to manufacturers. This is what a full spectrum should more or less look like. Peaks in the blue and red are very common for LEDs, but you want this middle section of other wavelengths filled in as well to supplement more difficult parts of the cycle like flowering. Tunability is also possible with LED, but you need to be very precise and you need to know exactly what your plant wants for certain wavelengths, which is very difficult, and mostly only researchers know that type of information. So I typically tell people to look for full spectrum products and think twice about tunability and whether they actually need that. Here are some examples from the Design Lights Consortium list. You can download what are called SQDs, spectrum quantum distribution diagrams, and you can see where the product is falling on the wavelengths. You can see this, these two products, the MaxLight and the BIOS, have quite a full spectrum, where this Signify model might be used for more like supplemental lighting because it doesn't have as much of a full spectrum. There are a lot of different form factors in this market. Shoe boxes, spider type fixtures, and grow bars are common. You want to make sure that the product isn't shading your canopy if you're using it in a greenhouse. Fixtures that we qualify for rebates need to have a 5-year warranty or more, lifetime of 50,000 hours or more on the LED and any fans or components associated, a PPE of 2.0 or more. We actually allow PPEs of 1.85 or more, but I would suggest looking for products that are 2.0 or more. The PPEs are increasing rapidly, so it's important to future-proof your products by getting a high PPE while you're purchasing. Definitely make sure you ask for spectral quantum diagrams from your manufacturers. Make sure they also have a customer support line that's helpful and available. A lot of these companies are fly-by-night and you really don't want to get involved with them. Ask for spec sheets and lab tests. You definitely want to see a UL listing as well. That's where manufacturers often cut corners, and it can be very dangerous if they don't have appropriate electrical listings and certifications. And you can check out the DLC list for new products being added and also the technical requirements. If there's a fixture that's not on the DLC list or on our qualified products list, but you'd like us to review it, please send it along. Here are some resources for your reference. I've already mentioned a bunch of these in this presentation. You can also always call us. We have more resources and slides than are in this presentation. So as a reminder, residential customers can submit online for a $100 grow light rebate, and commercial customers should call us at Efficacy Vermont. They can call the customer support line, and they will likely get routed to Jill O'Connor, who's a horticultural lighting specialist at Efficacy Vermont. You can also always reach out to me. Again, my name is Lauren, and my email's right here. And I want to thank you so much for your time today, and I hope that this presentation was helpful. Thanks so much.